Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Eddie Proudfoot podcast. Today, on our 11th episode, we are going to be talking about what you can do on your turn in Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. So let's get started. And when I say what you can do on your turn, I mean in a turn of combat. So up until this point, we have not talked about anything to do with combat, i.e. how fighting works in D&D. The only thing we've talked about is in episode 6, I described how your weapon attacks work and what the modifiers do when you make the attack roll and the damage roll and where your proficiency bonus is applied. So if you want a refresher on that, you can listen to the episodes on proficiency, which I think is episode 4, and the episode on weapons, which is episode 6. But other than that, we haven't really talked about what happens on your turn. Well, in combat in D&D, narratively, you can imagine everything is happening at once. So in a round of combat, that is where everyone gets to make one turn. That takes 6 seconds. And the idea is that everything's happening simultaneously. But obviously the DM can't listen to what everyone wants to do simultaneously, so we have to do it in a turn fashion. So your turn is determined by your initiative roll, which is just a d20 roll plus your dex mod. And then you get 4 things you can do on your turn once it comes around. You will get a object use, so that's either drawing your sword, maybe grabbing a spell casting implement, or swapping out your weapon, something like that. That's your use an object action. Then you have your movement, and your movement can be broken up on your turn, so you can move, do some things, and then continue moving, and you don't have to do your full movement every turn. You can choose to move 0 to all of it. Your movement is just your speed from your race, so that's probably going to be 30 feet or 25, depending on what race you picked. Then the next action you get is called your bonus action, and a bonus action is a little bit funny, because bonus action has no inherent use. It's only when you have features, say, from your class or your race that say, use a bonus action to do blank. So that's what it's for. It's for specific features that may be dependent on your class. So lots of classes use the bonus action. It's just going to be very specific to their situation. Finally, there is your main action. Main action is what you're going to use if you want to attack a creature. It's also what you're going to use if you want to cast a spell. So those are the 2 main ways we use our main action. So attacking someone, you roll to hit using a melee or ranged weapon, apply the appropriate modifiers, see if you beat their AC, deal the damage. Boom. Spell casting, we haven't talked about spell casting, but basically similar to a weapon attack, you can cast a spell, target a creature, see if you deal damage, so on and so forth. And I'll leave it at that for now, but there's a lot more to spell casting than I just mentioned. Now, other than attacking with either a weapon or a spell, there are other things you can do on your main action that are not attacking, and these are all strategic maneuvers that you can make during combat. So, unfortunately, to go through these in 2 minutes is not going to be very educational to anyone, so I'm just going to list off what these actions are, and in a subsequent episode, we are going to talk in depth about these all specifically. So the actions you can take using your main action that aren't attack or cast a spell are as follows. Dash, which gives you extra movement. Disengage, which means that you can move out of range of an enemy and not be hit by that enemy, and we'll talk more about that later. There's dodge, which means it's harder to hit you. There is help, which means you can assist, making it easier for one of your allies to hit someone else. There's the hide action, which means you can potentially obscure yourself using cover or some other means in order to not be hit or have a harder time being hit. There's the readied action, which means that there's not anything for you to do right now, but you can set up the description of an action to take place when an event occurs. Finally, there's the search action. So during combat, there's a lot going on, many moving parts. It's hard to do something like investigate your surroundings or even perceive your surroundings. So in order to do this during combat, we have to take what's called the search action and then do a perception or investigation check as our action for that turn. Okay, that has been a brief explanation of what you can do on your turn in combat in D&D. The only thing I left out is what you can do on your turn or not on your turn. But you get one other action once per round called a reaction. And your reaction is used mainly to hit someone that moves outside of your zone of control. What's your zone of control? Well, I'll talk about that in the next episode when I break down all of those other actions in more detail. Thank you for listening to this episode of the Eddie Proudfoot podcast. If you enjoyed it, please let us know by following us on Instagram, Spotify, or Twitter. And as always, may the gods have mercy on your soul.